The beggar who refused the king's gold. There once was a beggar who sat by the roadside for 40 years. A king passed by one morning and was struck by something unusual. The beggar was smiling. Not the smile of someone who had forgotten his poverty, but the smile of someone who had transcended it. The king stopped his carriage and asked, "What would you give for a chest of gold?" The beggar looked at him and said, "Everything I have." The king was confused. So he offered the gold anyway. The beggar refused. In that moment, the king realized he had just encountered something he could never buy. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that true wealth is not measured in possessions, but in the freedom from the desire for possessions. Krishna tells Arjuna that attachment is the root of suffering, not the lack of things. We live in an age of abundance, yet we feel impoverished. We collect more, yet feel emptier. The beggar in our story understood something modern psychology is only now confirming, that beyond a certain point, more things do not create more happiness. They create more anxiety, more comparison, more fear of loss. Buddhism calls this the second arrow. The first arrow is pain, losing money, facing rejection, experiencing loss. The second arrow is our resistance to that pain, our desperate grasping to undo it. The beggar had been hit by the first arrow long ago. But he had stopped shooting himself with the second. He had accepted his circumstances so completely that they no longer controlled him. This is not resignation. This is liberation. Consider your own life. How much of your energy goes into acquiring things you believe will finally make you happy? A better job, a nicer home, the right relationship, the perfect body. We are taught that happiness lives in the next achievement, the next purchase, the next milestone. But notice something, when you reach it, happiness visits briefly, then leaves. The goalpost moves. The hunger returns. This is the trap the beggar had escaped. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said something radical: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The beggar had few wants. Not because he was forced into poverty, but because he had examined each desire and asked, "Does this truly serve my peace?" Most of our wants are inherited from our families, our culture, our social circles. We want things we don't actually want. We chase goals we don't actually value. The beggar had done the work of questioning. Here is what the king could not understand: the beggar had already received the greatest gift. He had received freedom from the tyranny of wanting. Every moment the king spent protecting his wealth, the beggar spent in presence. Every night the king lay awake worried about loss, the beggar slept peacefully. The king had a kingdom. The beggar had his mind. And in the economy of human experience, the mind is the only currency that matters. Modern psychology calls this hedonic adaptation. We adapt to our circumstances, good or bad, and return to a baseline level of happiness. A lottery winner feels joy for months, then returns to their original happiness level. A person who loses their wealth experiences despair, then adapts. The beggar understood this intuitively. He had stopped fighting against his circumstances and started working with them. In that acceptance, he found something the king's gold could never buy: genuine peace. And in that silence between the king's offer and the beggar's refusal, something shifted in the universe. The king suddenly saw his own prison. He saw the weight of his possessions, the burden of his status, the constant fear of losing it all. He realized that the beggar, sitting by the roadside with nothing, was infinitely richer than he was. Not because poverty is noble, it is not. But because freedom is more valuable than any treasure. The beggar had chosen his poverty. The king was enslaved by his wealth. Today, examine one area where you are chasing more. More money, more recognition, more security. Ask yourself honestly, will this truly change my life? Or am I shooting the second arrow at myself, resisting what is and creating suffering in the process? Choose one small want and release it. Not through deprivation, but through understanding. Notice how much mental space becomes available. This is the beggar's secret. The beggar did not refuse the gold because poverty is spiritual. He refused it because he had already found what the gold was supposed to give him: peace, freedom, and the ability to smile at life exactly as it is. That is the invitation before you today. Not to become poor, but to become free. Subscribe to LifeVeda for daily wisdom that transforms your life.